So these are the important formulas that we're going to be making use of today. All right, we have our simple and compound interest as well as simple and compound depreciation. Okay, give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. There's a lot of excitement outside. My brother's going to his matric dance. That'll be you guys next year. Okay, so as I was saying, otherwise known as the straight line method of depreciation and the reducing method of depreciation. And then we have our conversion method for nominal and effective annual interest rates. We'll speak about what the difference between these two are when we get there. There is a question later on. We'll see if we get to it. Okay. So this is the first of our questions. I'm going to zoom out a little bit to make a bit of space for myself to write. We have Yaku, who invests 14,000 rands for 6 years. So the first thing we're going to need to do here is to construct a timeline. Okay. Now, to construct a timeline, I just like starting with the total number of years that this will be invested in, which is 6 years in this case. So I'm just going to draw a timeline that includes all 6 years. So the beginning of the period is known as T0. And just think of it as there are no amount of years that have passed, right? We are at the beginning. So that is T0. And then we're going to end off at T6 for this specific question. And we fill in the middle. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the end of the 6th year. So after 2 years, he's going to need money and withdraws 2,000 rands. And the interest rate for the first 4 years is 16% per annum compounded quarterly. For the remainder of the period, which is 2 years, the interest rate will change to 14% per annum compounded half yearly. So there's a lot of information over here, and I recommend that we just first fill in our information. So at T0, which is the beginning of the time period, we know that the investment is made for 14,000 rands. Okay. And then after 2 years, he's going to withdraw. So that is a minus 2,000 rands. So that's the two pieces of information filled in so far. The interest rate for the first 4 years, so from the beginning until the end of the 4 years, which would be from there to there, would be 16% per annum compounded quarterly. So as we know, we're going to write our interest rate in the form of a decimal, which is 0.16, and how often we are going to compound it. And in this case, it's quarterly. So how many times is that per year? If we say it's compounded quarterly, how many times would that be per year, guys? That would be 4 times. Thank you. So that's 4 times per year. And then for the remainder of the time, which is from the 4th year to the 6th, it's going to change to 14%, which is 0.14. And if it is compounded half yearly, that is twice a year. And then they ask us, how much money will this person have at the end of 6 years? Now we're working with compound interest here. So I'm going to write the general formula that we're going to use for a compound interest, which is that one. But we have 2 separate transactions happening over here. So let's start off with the journey of the 14,000 rands, right? So we start off with the 14,000 rands. And for the first 4 years, we have this interest rate, which is 0.16 divided by 4. And it is 4 years compounded 4 times. So how many is that? If you're compounding it 4 times per year, how much is it for the for all 4 years? Let's hear, guys. That would be 16. Thank you very much, Callan. So that would be 16. Great. Okay, so for the first 4 years, this is what happens to the money. And for the next 2 years, this whole amount over here becomes the new principal. Okay, which is why we can then go on and add the compounded interest for the next 2 years right next to it. It doesn't have to be two separate calculations. All right, so my red bracket will then become the principal or the starting amount for the next 2 years. And we know for the next 2 years, it will be times by 1 plus 0.14 divided by 2. And if it is 2 years and twice a year, then how many times will that be? Twice a year for 2 years. Then that is how much? What is my exponent for this part of the question? Twice a year for 2 years. Then that is 4. Are we with me, guys? Are we with me? Thank you very much, Funzo, for showing us how we got there. So this is the theoretical accumulated amount, but we know that this person withdraws 2,000 Rand somewhere in the middle, right? So this is what the person would have earned, but I am going to subtract the 2,000 along with the interest that it would have earned. Do you guys understand? So we have to do this whole calculation for the 2,000 rands as well, because that will tell you how much interest that 2,000 rand would have earned us. So it is minus the 2,000 rands times firstly the first interest rate over 4. Let's figure out how long that is. This was at the end of 2 years, so that is 2 years. 2 years, 4 times a year. How many times is that? Because for the first part, this was compounded quarterly for 2 years. So how much is that, guys? Quarterly for 2 years. That would be, I know Funzo is going to come through with the calculation, quarterly for 2 years. That means my exponent is 8. Does it make sense? 4 times a year, 2 years. So that's 8 times. Okay, so that's for the first 2 years. That's for year number 2 and 3. And then after that, it would have earned 1 plus 0.14 divided by 2. And this time it is still just the same because it is 2 years twice a year. So it's to the power of 4. Before we even calculate this, do we understand this calculation? Can I have a thumbs up, thumbs down? Just go to reactions. Give me one of these if you understand what just happened, and one of these if I lost you somewhere along the line. Renelwe, let's speak, my darling. Do you mind unmuting yourself?
Hi, ma'am. How are you?
Hello, I'm well. You?
I'm okay. You lost me when it came to minus 2,000.
Okay. So, Renelo, do you agree that if this was just an investment of 14,000, then the first part of my calculation would have been perfect?
Yeah.
Do you understand that part? But now we know that 2 years in, this person withdraws 2,000 rands. Do you agree?
Yeah, but then the question is, do you minus the 2,000 after like the first calculation of the 4 years?
Yes. So you first calculate how much money would this person have had in total had there not been any adjustments. Do you understand? So you say in total, this is how much the person would have earned. But somewhere along the line, this person withdrew 2,000 rands, which would have earned. So this is a theoretical interest rate that the 2,000 rands would have earned. Do you see? So you say, not only did they minus 2,000 rands, they took out 2,000 Rand with its interest that it would have earned. Does that make sense? Okay, I see a thumbs up. Okay, I think everyone is with me now. So the first calculation is how much would this person have earned in total? And the second one is how much did they end up withdrawing with its implications? And now I'm going to need my calculator. And I hope you guys have been calculating on your side. Is there anyone who's been calculating for me? So we can check what the total for this amount is. So you think of it as two different or separate calculations. Okay. First one for the amount that was there in the first place, and the second one for any adjustments along the way. You do that even if you add money. I'll show you just now in the next question. Okay, I did work it out earlier though. And in my earlier calculation, tell me if this matches with you guys. I got 30,783 rands and 52 cents. Can I have a thumbs up, thumbs down on that answer? Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Screenshotters, do your thing before we move on to the next question. All right. Let's see. Okay. Now, we have 150,000 Rand that is deposited in an investment account for 6 years in total. Okay, so we know whatever is happening is going to be happening over 6 years. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with my timeline. T0, which is before any of the years have even passed, that's the beginning of the period, right? So I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Remember, these T1, T2, T3 are representing the end of the year. Okay, so when you're at T1, it's the end of the first year. So you are earning the interest because the year has passed. All right, that's how it works. So in the beginning, this person deposits 150,000 rands. All right, at an interest rate of 12% per annum, which was compounded half yearly for the first 4 years. So I'm going to move this up to make space for us. So for the first 4 years, so from the beginning until the end of the 4th year, this was 12%, 0.12, and this was compounded half yearly, so twice a year. Okay, and then 8.5% per annum compounded yearly for the rest of the period. So for the rest of the period, which is the 2 years, it is 0.085. And if it is compounded yearly, you don't have to write this because it's just divided by 1. Okay, so it's once a year. All right. Sorry, someone wants to join the call. Let me just admit. There we go. There we go. Okay. And then they say a deposit of 8,000 Rand is made into the account after the first year. So at T1, once the first year has passed, this person decides to add on 8,000 Rands. Okay, and then another 2,000 Rand after 5 years of the initial investment. So then here at T5, this person adds another 2,000 Rands. All right. Then they say calculate the value of the investment at the end of the 6 years. And I can already tell we're going to need more space. So I'm going to make more space. There we go. Great. So as we were saying, we're going to calculate first this 150,000 independently in the account. How much would it earn over the whole 6 years? So you say the 150,000 over the 6 years plus the 80,000 over the 5 years, because the 8,000, excuse me, because the 8,000 was added after the first year. So it's 8,000 for 5 years plus the 2,000 Rand for the last year. So it's basically 3 separate calculations that we are adding. Does that make sense? So let's get started. So my accumulated amount, the first part of this is I have 150,000 Rands. Okay. That I am investing at 12% compounded half yearly for 4 years. So if it is compounded twice a year for 4 years, how many is that? Twice a year for 4 years. Then what is my time period? Thank you very much. That would be 8. Thank you. And thereafter, for the final 2 years, it is at 0,085. You don't have to write this over 1, okay? 0,085 compounded yearly, which means it's twice because it's 2 years. Okay, so that would be just the 150,000. Okay, then you say plus, okay, plus the 8,000 Rands that I added on at 12% compounded twice a year. For how long? We're starting off at T1 this time. So that would be 1, 2, 3 years. So if it is 3 years and it is compounded twice a year, how many times is that? 3 years and it is compounded twice a year. Thank you, Fuzo. That would be 6. And the remainder looks just like the other one because it is the last 2 years. So it will be 1 plus 0,085 for 2 years. That's the calculation for the 8,000. But you also deposited 2,000 Rands, but this was towards the end. Okay, so the 2,000 Rand won't have the 12% timeline because it wasn't there during the 12% timeline. It was there for the 0,085. And this time it is only 1 year because it was from year 5. So it is once. And let's see what the accumulated amount is here. Let me see. Please also do the calculation just to check me because I do make mistakes, trust me. 1 plus 0,12. If you have an answer for us, please send it in the chat so we can all compare our answers. Sometimes you cannot fit this whole calculation on your calculator. It's happened to me before. In that case, you will just do the first 2 and then you'll add the third one after you press equals. Okay. 1 plus 0,085 squared. Does anybody have an answer for us? Okay, so I get 296,976,9992, which we will then round off to 296,976. Nope, 977, because when you round off the 99.9, it's going to make the 7,00. Can I have someone check that for me? And can we have a thumbs up, thumbs down on this question? Wonderful. So yes, this is just separate calculations, okay? Separate calculate. Those were very few thumbs up. Is everyone else fine? There are 12 of you guys in here. There we go. A few more thumbs up. Jeez, I look like I'm drowning on this computer. Okay. Okay, now I'll move this down. I have to move this one even further. There. Okay. Now we have 60,000 Rand is invested in an account which offers 7% per annum compounded quarterly for the first 18 months. Thereafter, the interest rate changes to 5% per annum compounded monthly. 3 years after the initial investment, 5,000 Rand is withdrawn. How much is at the end of 5 years? So you sometimes have to read to the end of this whole question to see what time period we're actually working with. And in this case, it is 5 years. Okay, nope, that's not what was meant to happen. There we go. So let's make our timeline. We know our timeline will be 5 years because that is the whole time period that this whole shenanigans is happening. And T5. 1, 2, 3, 4. So as long as you can organize your knowledge on a timeline, then you should be able to do all of these questions, right? So in the beginning, we know it's 60,000 Rand that is invested. So at T0, I'm going to go ahead and write my 60,000. Great. And it offers 7% compounded quarterly for the first 18 months. Now, if I'm going to convert 18 months to years, what is that going to give me? 18 months, and I want to convert that to years because our timeline works based on years. Okay. So we don't say T1, T2 with months because that's just going to confuse everyone. But if I'm going to convert it, thank you, Callan, that would be 1.5. So that would be there somewhere. Okay. So for the first 1.5 years, like so, this would be 0.07% compounded quarterly. So that would be 4 times a year. Okay. Thereafter, it changes to 5% per annum compounded monthly. So for the rest of this time period, it's going to be 0.05, and it is compounded monthly, which means how many times a year? If it is compounded monthly, then that would mean it's how many times per year? 12. Thank you very much. Great. Okay. 3 years after the investment, this person withdraws 5,000 Rand. So at the end of year 3, so at T3, this person is going to subtract 5,000 Rands along with any interest that would have been earned on that 5,000 Rands. Okay, so we have 2 separate calculations in this case. First, we're going to start with the 60,000 Rands. So my accumulated amount is the 60,000 Rands. 1 plus 0.07 over 4. Now let's look. How many times or how many quarters are there in 18 months? Quarters of a year. Let's start off with how many months is a quarter of a year? How many months is a quarter of a year? Anybody? How many months do we have? If I say a quarter of a year, how many months would that be? Anyone? That's 3 months. Thank you, Tandiwe. So in 18 months, we then have how many quarters? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. So that means this will be compounded 6 times. Make sense, guys? So there are 3 months in a quarter. So that means for this whole time period, it will be compounded 6 times. All right. So that's the first year and a half. And then thereafter, We now have 0,05 monthly, and we need to figure out how many months are in 1, 2, 3.5 years. How many months are in 3.5 years? Let's hear, guys. How many months do we have in 3.5 years? 42. Thank you very much. All right. So that is the hypothetical, and this is 6,000, not 60,000. There we go. So that would be the hypothetical money that this person would have had in the account after 5 years. But they went and withdrew 5,000 rands, okay, which would have earned the following interest. 1 plus 0,05 divided by 12. And this was for 2 years, which means it would be how many months? If it was for 2 years, then it would have been 2 times 12, which is 24 months. Okay, so let's get going with our calculations over here. Let's get going with our calculations. 1 plus 0,07 divided by 4 times 6 minus 5,000. Great. I have an amount over here. Please check me on your side. I got 73,762 rands and 19 cents. Can I have a thumbs up, thumbs down, please? Wonderful. Can we have someone who's actually checking that my amounts are correct and not just going with what I'm saying? We need to make sure that I am correct. Okay. Wonderful. All right, screenshotters. I'm hoping you are done with screenshots so we can move on to the next one. So this is essentially the same types of questions over and over, right? First, you just draw your timeline over the whole period of time in years. You fill in all of your interest rates along with how often they are compounded. You fill in any withdrawals and deposits, and then you make one very long sum. Okay, that's basically it. Okay, and then it got messy here because I moved stuff. There. We're going to get to question 4 just now, which is a little bit more interesting. Okay, now we have Sipo, who invested 30,000 Rand for 6 years. Investment earned interest of 12% per annum, compounded monthly for the first 2 years. And then after, the interest rate changed to 10.8%, compounded semi-annually. Calculate the value at the end of 6 years. So there were no other transactions here. All there is a change of interest rates. Okay, so we could say relatively this is simpler than the ones that we have done so far, considering there is no withdrawal. There's basically one calculation, if I could say. So this is 7.3, and this is 6 years again. T0 to T6, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So this would be 30,000 rands. And then they said for the first 2 years, so T1 and T2, over this time period, the interest rate was 12%. Compounded monthly. So I will be dividing this by 12 because it's every month, right? And then for the rest of the time, it changes to 10.8% compounded semi-annually. Semi-annually is how many times per year, beautiful people? Semi-annually, that would be how many times per year? Twice. Thank you. Okay, and that's it. That's it. Now we just have to do our calculations because there are no withdrawals, there are no deposits. It's just a change of interest rate. So our accumulated amount will be my initial 30,000. Okay. At 12% per annum compounded monthly. And how many months do we have in the first 2 years? How many months will we then have in the first 2 years? That will be 24. Nice. Okay. And then this becomes our principal amount for the rest of the time period. So then that whole amount will be multiplied by the 10%. Okay, semi-annually. So 1, 2, 3, 4 years, twice a year. How many times will that be? Over 4 years, and we're doing it twice a year. So my exponent is 8. Thanks, Funzo. Okay, let's get working out. 30,000 12 to the power of 24. Okay, I have an amount over here. Can I have people check me, please? I got 58,000 and 17.51 cents. Thank you, Tandiwe. Thank you very much. Okay, we're all good. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm going to skip. No, I'm not. There's enough time to do all of them. So I'm not going to skip 7.4. We're going to do it because there's more than enough time. Thank you. Thank you for all the thumbs up. This is bothering me. There we go. Okay, I'm going to move on to 7.4, but I'm going to do it on the side here. I'll zoom out for anyone who wants to take a screenshot thereafter. Okay, Mary deposits 25,000 Rand into a savings account with an interest rate of 18% per annum, compounded monthly. She withdrew 8,000 Rand after 2 years, and then she deposited 4,000 Rand into this account 3.5 years after the initial deposit. What amount will Mary have after 5 years after making the initial deposit? So overall, my time period here is 5 years. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be working with, 5 years. So let's get going with our timeline. There. T0, T5, 3. No, my scale is off. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There we go. So initially at the beginning, this is 25,000 rands. Okay, at an interest rate of 18% per annum compounded monthly. So it seems we don't have an interest rates change here. Do we see that? All we have is withdrawals and deposits. So over the whole 5 years, I have an 18% interest rate that is compounded monthly. Okay, compounded monthly. And then it says, after 2 years, she withdraws 8,000 rand. So at T2, we have a minus of 8,000 rand, along with any interest it would have earned. Okay. And 3.5 years after the initial deposit, she deposits another 4,000 rand. So that would be over here. She deposits another 4,000 rands, just to make it clear. Okay. So we're going to have 3 separate calculations over here. Right? 3 separate calculations. No interest rate changes, but deposits and withdrawals. So the 25,000 rands, we're going to calculate over the whole 5 years because there was no interest rate change. So you want to know the hypothetical amount. If I had just left that 25,000 rand all the way until the end, what would I have earned? So we're going to start off with the 25,000. 1 plus 0.18 over 12. And if it was left over 5 years and it's compounded monthly, what is my exponent here? What is my exponent over the whole 5 years compounded monthly? Thank you. That would be 60 times. Great. Okay. Minus. Now we start off with the withdrawal of 8,000 rands, which was done 2 years in. So I lost 4 years worth of 8,000 rands interest. So it's 1 plus 0.18 over 12. And if I lost 4 years and it's compounded monthly, what is my exponent in this case? 4 years compounded monthly. So my exponent would be what? 4 years compounded monthly. That would be 48, right? 48. Great. And then the final part of this is the 4,000 rand that was added 3.5 years since the initial investment. So 1 plus same interest rate. And how many months are in 1.5 years? It was added 3.5 years after the initial investment, which means it was only there for 1.5 years. And how many months are in 1.5 years? How many months will be in the 1.5 years? Thank you very much, Ganlin. 18 months. Now let's get calculating, guys. 0.18. Plus the 4,000 rand. Ugh, I was almost at the end. And then I messed it up. And I'm not going to go in and work it out again. But I do have an answer here. Does anybody else have an answer? Just so I compare, because I'm not going back to work this out again. 49,962. Okay, it seems we all agree. I have a different answer here, but maybe I have made a mistake. 49,962,03. Thumbs up, thumbs down from everyone else. Are we getting the same? We all got the same. Okay, then that means there must be a mistake in my calculations. Okay. Great. Question 4 is the last that we have. Okay, which corresponds with the amount of time that we have left anyway. All right, let's start off with 4.1, which says 8,000 Rand is invested for 5 years at an interest rate of 17% compounded monthly. Determine the value of the investment at the end of the 5 years using the nominal interest rate given. And now we have entered the nominal and effective rate chat. 4.1.1, that's just the calculation. Okay, A is equal to, that would be 8,000 rands. 1 plus my interest rate, 0.17, which is compounded monthly. That would be 12 times over 5 years. So what is my exponent? Over 5 years, what is my exponent? 60. Thank you, Tandiwe and Funzo. Great. There we go. And I get 18,000 rands, 605 and 87 cents. Okay, can we have someone check me, please? Okay. Thank you, Asande. Now they say convert the nominal interest rate to an effective interest rate. Now, if you remember or recall at the beginning, we did have a formula, which I'm going to rewrite over here. Tandiwe has a different answer. A different answer, which is interesting. I'm just checking myself, guys. As I said, I do make mistake. Nope, I still got 18,000. Oh, okay. All right. All right. I just wanted to sort that out. Okay. So 4.1.2 formula is 1 plus the effective rate, which is what they want us to find here, is equal to 1 plus my nominal rate over how many times this will be compounded. So that M means how many times will this interest be compounded? How many times a year? Okay, this will be compounded a year. And I think this is the time to speak about the difference between these two types of interest rates. So the nominal interest rate is the one that they have stated for you. It's basically the simple interest rate. It's like assuming you get interest on the same amount over and over and over again. So what I mean is, if you invest the amount of money, right? After a year, you get some interest, right? If you withdraw that interest, then you are back to the initial amount you started with. Do you guys agree? You are back to the same money that you started with, which means in the next month, you're going to keep earning the same interest and the same interest because you keep withdrawing that money. Whereas your effective rate accounts for all of the money that is compounding. All right, so I'm going to say it in very simple terms. Let's say you invest 5,000 bucks. Okay. First year at 10%, you get 500 Rand interest rate. Now in your account, you no longer have 5,000, you have 5,500, which means in the next year, you're now going to earn 550 Rand interest. So it's changing, it's increasing. So this would be your effective interest rate. Okay, because your interest changes as the amount in your bank account changes. But if you keep withdrawing, let's say you earned the 500 and you withdrew it, then you're just going to earn 500 again in the next month. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So let's substitute here and see what our effective interest rate is. We want this guy over here, so we're going to make it the subject of my formula, which means I'm going to take 1 over to the other side, and it's going to be minus. So my effective interest rate will be equal to this whole shenanigans here, nominal over M minus 1. Now let's substitute. Okay, so our nominal interest rate is then this one that was given in the question, 17% per annum. So if I substitute here, I'm going to get 1 plus 0.17. And we said it's compounded monthly, which means it's how many times a year? It's compounded monthly. How many times a year would that be? 12. So your M is 12, as well as in the exponent, minus 1. So let's look for our effective interest rate. Minus 1. That gives me 0.18389, blah, 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 blah. But if we want R, what am I supposed to do with I? How do we get to the interest rate? R. I want to know it as a percentage. Then how do I do that? That's just your I multiplied by 100. Okay, so then R, the interest rate, will be 18.39%. Can I have a thumbs up, thumbs down, please, guys? This makes sense. All right. Great. Now it says use the effective rate that you have just now found to calculate the value of the investment and compare it to your answer in 4.1.1. Okay. 4.1.2. So we're going to use our same formula. In. The only thing is we don't do the whole timesing and dividing. We use how many years it is. This is what I mean, right? So our principal amount was 8,000 rands, right? 1 plus and my interest rate that I have now found, which is 0.18389. I think it was 1 after that, blah, 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 to the power of 5, because it was 5 years. Does it make sense, guys? So when you're using your nominal interest rate, you go ahead and you do the whole times how many times it's compounded and divided your interest rate by how many times it's compounded. Okay, but when you're using your effective interest rate, you just use it the formula the way it is. No times divide what. Does that make sense? Now let's work it out because we need to do a comparison here. 1,183,891. Okay, I get 18,605,81. And that's mainly because I rounded off this. Okay, but what can you comment about the two amounts that we got here? Look at 4.1.1 And look at 4.1 point. This was 0.3. Excuse me, not 2. 4.1.3. What can you say about those two amounts? If you look at them, what do we say, guys? They're similar, aren't they? Granted, my decimals are a bit off, but that's because I rounded off. Okay, that's because I just rounded off, but the amounts are very similar. All right, so now do we understand the difference between effective and nominal rate? Effective caters for the amount of times you're going to be multiplying and multiplying and adding on and adding on. Okay, whereas nominal is just saying compounded, added back, interest, added back, interest, added back. But essentially you get back to the same answer. Can I have a thumbs up, thumbs down on this question, please, lovelies? Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. I think we can squeeze in one more. I think we can. Let's look at Zakele, who inherits 10,000 Rand and invests it in an account for 8 years. The interest rate for the first 4 years is 8.4% per annum, compounded half yearly. Then it goes up to 9.2% per annum, compounded monthly. Calculate how much interest he has earned. Interest. They didn't say calculate how much is in the accounts. They want to know the interest he has earned. Okay, so quickly, let's go with timeline. Okay, in total, it was in there for 8 years. That's a very long time. T0. I wonder if my H's are going to fit here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So for the first 4 years, our interest rate is 8.4% compounded half yearly. So we have a 0.084. Half yearly means how many times a year? I don't know why my font suddenly is so tiny. 0.84. Half yearly means how many times a year, guys? That would be twice a year. Okay, thank you. And then for the last 4 years, the interest is 0.092 compounded monthly. So that would be 12 times. Okay, we have the same amount here. There are no deposits, no withdrawals. We just want to know the interest. So first, I work out my accumulated amount, which is 10,000 rands. And my brain is tapping out already. 1 plus 0.084 divided by 2. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4 years, twice a year. So that would be 8. Okay. And then the second part of it is 1 plus 0.092 over 12. 4 years, but this time 12 times a year. So that would be to the power of 48. Let's find out what the accumulated amount is quickly, guys. Let's see, 1 plus 0.084. 1 plus 0.092 to the power of 48. Okay, I got 20,051.76 cents. But that's not what they asked. They asked us the interest earned. So this is the total amount of money in the account. Now, in order to get the interest, you have to subtract how much he invested in the first place, which was the 10,000 rands. And that means he has earned 10,051 rands and 76 cents interest.